to the Space for Kentucky Roundtable. The Space for Kentucky Roundtable is a place to bring together space-focused businesses and enthusiasts so we can learn, discuss, and share insights about the space industry. This provides an opportunity for companies and individuals to come together to grow our space economy. Please take a minute to sign up for the Space for Kentucky notifications so that you are aware of all the amazing things that are coming up. In addition, here is a page of resources and links to help you get space into your classroom. I will add more as I get them. Tonight, we have 5 amazing educators that will present, and I hope that you will leave inspired to bring space into your classroom. Okay, we will move on, and I have ARES Learning will be the next one that we do, and Dr. Mark Wagner is the founder of ARES Learning, and ARES Learning it engages students in growing the space economy with hands-on entrepreneurial education from incubation to acquisition. He is also the author of the Space Education, Preparing Students for Humanity's Multi-Planet Future. And if that wasn't enough, he is also the president of Space Prize, which is a competition, an essay competition and video competition where that engages young women in high school to reach for STEM careers. And I had the opportunity to be a judge for the first one in New York City. So please, Dr. Wagner, take it away.
Sure thing. And for Robert and anybody else, I'm going to just drop the link to the deck in straight away before I share my screen, so you guys can follow up on this. Almost every slide I've got some links in there, so there should be a number of resources you could dive into. But if I've done this right, you guys should see a big full screen slide. Fantastic. So yeah, thank you for the introduction, Izzy. I won't really say anything else about myself other than to say I'm a former high school English teacher, and I was a tech coordinator at the site, district, and county levels before almost 20-year career in doing professional development for teachers in education technology. So over the last few years, since just before COVID, and I got the opportunity to hit the reset button like everybody else, focused really all of my work now on space education. It feels good to kind of come full circle. In my undergrad, Izzy House, I was a aeronautical engineering student, so it's fun to come back all the way around to that. And I know I'll be preaching to the choir for the most part, but I think I have kind of a unique approach, so I want to share it at least briefly. And I usually, when I'm talking to educators, start with the idea of asking them, are students ready for this reality? Never mind the future, but this reality right now. We've got reusable launch vehicles. We've got satellites in orbit that are monitoring the Earth in high definition video real time all the time. We've got a constellation of satellites providing broadband internet access regardless of borders or despots for that matter. And technologies like these, similar to GPS before them or the internet and cell phones before them, we will see these transform all kinds of careers. So this is just not about getting kids into the space industry or the aerospace industry or the growing space economy. This is about how space is going to affect everything in the economy. I like to say, if you're going to go work for a sneaker company, you better understand what materials from space could make better sneakers. You better understand what you might do with a GPS chip in your sneaker, right? And certainly space companies need people who understand accounting and marketing and all of that as well. So we've got to prepare students to be good contributors to this economy. So another thing I like to roll out right now, particularly post-COVID, is we're living at a time when 40% of New York City public school students were chronically absent last year. And 70% of LAUSD teachers reported burnout and a desire to leave the profession. And those are not unusual numbers across the country. But Unistellar, the telescope company, actually released a independent study that Wakefield Research put it on last year that looked at 500 U.S. families across demographics and income brackets. And they found that 93% of U.S. kids are interested in space. So this isn't a boy thing or a girl thing or an elementary thing and a secondary thing. It's not a rich or a poor thing. Kids are excited about space, and we can tap into that to increase student engagement and maybe reduce teacher burnout too, when we're looking at something hopeful about their future instead of remediating, looking backward at what they missed during COVID, right? We are talking about workforce development. That's obviously particularly relevant to this group, but you guys have heard also the statistics about preparing kids for a potentially $1 trillion space economy by the time they graduate. And that's not counting whole new $1 trillion economies like asteroid mining or space solar power that will also, similar to the other technologies I mentioned, transform many industries and change the situation here on the ground. And we've got to prepare kids for that. And then it sounds a little more out there, but we are also preparing kids for a multi-planet future. Theoretically, today's second graders are going to graduate into a world where we've got a permanent presence on the moon, even if NASA struck that word from the plan, right? And we've landed people on Mars if Elon has his way. And we have probably several commercial space stations having moved into the space that the ISS fills right now. So what are we doing to prepare kids for a reality where that has all taken place by the time they graduate into the workforce? So with that in mind, one of our answers is science, technology, engineering, and math. And this group has certainly covered a lot of that. I think it's also one step more than that, and it's not just the arts. I'm a big advocate for the humanities in education. But if we can't predict the future, and I think we've seen over and over again that we can't, and the schools are kind of bad at that. And maybe I'm also bad at that in laying out the last few slides. We can prepare kids for an unpredictable, fast-moving future and give them the skill sets and mindsets they need to be successful in that situation. So we like to focus on the explorer's mindset and comfort with the unknown, and we focus on moonshot thinking big outside the box, and we focus on design thinking to iterate and prototype and test and perhaps pivot depending on the feedback that you're getting. So we look at things like this. We look at synthesis across disciplines. We look at ethical dimensions of scenarios that kids are facing, and we look at what we call Hansei, borrowing from the Japanese, looking at relentless self-reflection. So preparing kids with the skill sets and mindsets they need to be successful in their future. And we do that cross-disciplinary ways. I could dive into a lot more detail on these, or you guys could jump over to the ARESlearning.com website and watch some of the videos. We got the opportunity to do a moonshot lab in Honolulu, and it's amazing to see what these kids did. It was funding meant for primarily Indigenous kids in Hawaii, and to see what they did when you asked them, what problem do you want to solve, and gave them all the resources of the moonshot lab at their disposal. So in the interest of time, I'm actually I realize I already talked about explorer's mindset, at least touched on it, and moonshot thinking and design methodology. So there's links in all these slides if you guys want to go to other resources like National Geographic and Google's X Lab, where you can find more material on this. But I want to dive into the book. This is not free. A lot of the resources I will be sharing are free. A lot of them are well worth the price, but you guys can pop over to Amazon and pick this up. It's kind of an academic volume. I had the opportunity to go back after my PhD in education technology, got to go back and get graduate certificates in space education and space philosophy. So who knew those existed, but I'm glad they do. And all of the papers I wrote, I kind of had my ducks in a row and put them together into this book. So it looks at a lot of the issues I was just talking about in terms of how we can prepare kids today. It also looks a little further down the road at how we might educate students when we get there, which it turns out, if you're teaching kids today, having them think about what the first school on the moon might look like is a great way to engage a lot of the issues and a lot of the science around that. You start talking life support at a school on the moon, and you're teaching the water cycle, the carbon cycle, the oxygen cycle, and so forth, right? So the last third of the book then looks at space philosophy, issues of governance and ethics and sustainability and that sort of thing. I had the opportunity working with the Space Prize Foundation to pull together a curriculum that essentially accompanies it and covers those same ideas. Now, this is a free open education resource. You can get it easily by going to spaceeducation.org. One of our founders snatched up that URL, and the link also is in the deck. But it's not just an introduction to space science and the history of space exploration. It's also why space is important to people here on Earth, what's going on in the new space economy. It gets into issues of sustainability and governance and ethics, and sort of farther term looks at issues like avoiding extinction and aspiring to humanity's greater purpose in the cosmos. So kind of an ambitious flex book, an online textbook, but lots of great material there. It was designed for the high school students we were working with at the time, but you certainly could use it with kids of any age and have the reading level and interest in it. I have an online course that kind of walks teachers through the book and the curriculum. If you're interested in that, you can find it right now at areslearning.com/course. And it's full of lots of activities you could turn around and use with your kids. And we actually have a back to school special going right now. So real special pricing on there if you want to head on over to areslearning.com/course. Another one, this is by far the most expensive thing I'll share on here, but it's super cool. We connected with Dr. Kirby Runyon, who's a geologist, and he does training for commercial astronauts to teach them what they're going to be looking at on their suborbital parabolic flights when they look down at the Earth. And so we go through New Mexico and we study landforms that you might find on the moon or Mars or Titan or elsewhere in the solar system. It includes a STEM tour of Spaceport America and a tour of the Virgin Galactic facilities there. So that's October 26th if you want to join Kirby and I out in the New Mexico desert and see white sands and lava flows and impact craters and things like that. The Aldrin Family Foundation is another foundation I'm working with right now, and they have these spectacular giant size maps. We're talking 33 feet on a side for kids to study and interact with. They come with programmable robotic rovers that can interact with the map. They come with reference books that the kids can look at and a pro globe so they can associate it with a 3D body in space too. So I didn't want to fail to mention them. If you guys head over to aldrinfoundation.org, you can learn more about that program and others that they offer. Now, in terms of additional free opportunities, I co-host with some of my colleagues and friends the Space Education Summit. Our fourth one is coming up on November 10th. It's a conference style event, but it's online on Zoom like this. We open the day with a astronaut panel. We have 3 astronauts confirmed. We're going to ask them how students might best prepare for everything we're talking about right now. Followed by breakout sessions in multiple strands. We have an education strand, psychology strand, young professional strand, with some really great speakers and a special guest for a fireside chat at the end of the day. So if you guys head over to spaceeducation.events or the longer, more direct link in the deck, you can sign up for that now, and that's free. Highly recommended. Another free source of video content for you and your students. By the way, the summit, we have a lot of the past sessions on the YouTube channel for the summit, which is also linked in the deck. On a separate YouTube channel, we have the Space Prize Speaker Series. I got to do, I guess you could call it season 1. We spoke with 18 people, a lot of them women, but not all of them. We were working to inspire young women. But 18 people from across the space industry. We talked to not only astronauts, engineers, and scientists, but entrepreneurs, designers, lawyers, historians. We're talking space lawyers, space historians, space interior designers, space fashion designers. So really kind of a great lineup, and all freely available videos that you guys can use with your students. And it really was focused on their career development and their path. On the back of the last Space Education Summit, we launched a Facebook group. You can get there by going to spaceeducator.net. We call it the Space Educator Network. And that's growing. There's a handful of prolific members who share lots of resources. I try to put resources in there that I think might be relevant to educators and enthusiasts in less formal roles. So you guys are all invited to join. It's just spaceeducator.net. And then finally, it's a long, ugly URL, but you'll find it in the deck that I shared. But I did have the opportunity when I was working with Space Prize to have a few interns, and they had finished their other work, and we had some time left over. And so they compiled a spreadsheet of, at this point, it's about 100 space education resources, sort of lightly annotated, so you know the value to students or teachers or parents. And you can find all kinds of resources there, a lot of the ones we talked about today, and many, many others. So wanted to pass that on to you guys as well. Now, I've reached the end of this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Looks like there's a couple things in the chat in case there's other questions. And then I imagine Izzy's going to ask if anybody has questions. So happy to entertain those.
Absolutely. Yes. And I would like to point out that those speaker series and everything are really good. And they have very interesting people. And it's not just for STEM. Like he said, it was interior designers, lawyers. This whole economy is going to be full of different types of professions, and not just, astronauts, though we do need astronauts and engineers, but there's so many more. And that's one of the reasons why we want to get kids excited about space and connect them. There's so many different connections that we have in our daily life that people just don't relate as space. Like, I mean, we carry space in our pocket. Everything that's on our cell phone is related to space, and people need to, the children that are in schools, they need to know how to access that information to clean our planet, because we live in a space station that's floating in space. So we need to grab that technology and learn how to apply it in different situations. So any questions? And that particular document is wonderful. It is also listed in that link that I had, and a lot of the links I got and put on there were from there. So Space Prize is global. Didn't you do like Paris? The first one was in New York, but then you went to other parts
Paris
of
and Portugal. There's not a challenge active right now, but yeah, definitely the resources are great for everybody.
And can you tell us just a little bits about how the girls have developed? I've seen quite a bit
Well,
about.
I'll tell you my favorite story in the context of what we were just talking about. There was a girl, Maya, in New York, and her dad encouraged her to, enter the essay competition, right? And there were a lot of girls that entered that were into math and science and space. But she was more of a self-professed English and social studies nerd, right? And she played lacrosse. She didn't think it was really for her. But of course, she wrote a great essay, and we ended up, as she got among the finalists, she ended up getting connected with a mentor who had been in PR for NASA and had worked at a bunch of space startups over the years, and Polycorn. And in the end, Maya ended up she was 100% bought in, and at the end she said, I never thought there'd be a place for me in the space industry. I didn't know they needed writers in space. And it's like, oh yes, we need actually quite a bit of that. You got to be able to communicate these ideas to other people. So yeah, that was a highlight for me.
Awesome. Yes, yeah. There's room for space for everyone. So I want to sincerely thank all the presenters tonight. Courtney Black, Dr. Deepika Sangam, Kaci Heins, Dr. Mark Wagner, and Robert Ion. Thank you so much for spending your night with us and sharing space. Please take a minute and sign up for Space for Kentucky notifications. And one last time, here's the website where you can get the resources that we discussed tonight and more. We will add, if you have more, please send them to me and we will get them on there. I hope that you have found this evening enjoyable and inspirational. And I hope it has inspired you to reach for the stars.